Hello again, and welcome everyone back to another Why I vid. Today I want to talk about why I recommend Void Crew. Now, Void Crew is a cooperative space combat game that sees up to 4 players forming a crew and battling against the threat known as the Hollow. The story is pretty vague outside of that, and players, as far as I can tell, are humans who praise something called the Metem, and they use their own clones that are grown on board the ships to perform the actual missions, while your original bodies sit safely back at a base. Void Crew is early access currently, but has enough to be getting on with. Players can crew one of 2 different classes of ship that vary in complexity of their layout and the maximum amount of equipment they can install. The smallest vessel can actually be played solo if you want, or with a couple of players, with the aid of AI known as brains, that basically just man the turrets, but a full human team can work on any of the ships, and really it's more people is more fun ultimately. The missions come in a variety of forms, from defending friendly convoy ships, from different ways of attackers, salvaging data from wrecked stations and other bases, raiding hollow facilities, ambushing enemy transports, and more. I'm assuming more is planned at this point as well, and the game has, I think it's 3 different regions that you can take missions in as you level up, and they obviously get progressively more difficult. The general gameplay, though, reminds me a lot of games like Guns of Icarus, for the small number of you who may have played that back in the day. Players have to work as different roles on the ship, from things like the pilot, gunners, engineers, and also having someone, or maybe a couple of you, being able to EVA to enter things like facilities and wrecks to find materials that you can use for upgrades and to actually grab some of the mission critical items. No one is locked into their role, however, and you can freely jump around different stations as you please, but it obviously does help to have someone who's the dedicated pilot, for instance, and someone who might be ready to go out and perform repairs as damage starts coming in, amongst other tasks. So yeah, a big part of the game is the combat, as missions will take place in large arenas for each mission. The structure of these can be a single objective, while others can actually be a string of, I think it's up to a maximum of 3 different missions in a row, so planning and smart use of any resources you gain will play a big part in the multi-stage missions. Gunners will be firing the ship's main weapons at swarms of enemy fighters, heavy bombers, snipers, and even larger threats like cruisers, and the longer a mission runs, the more waves of enemies appear. Basically, as you enter a zone, you start to get a timer, and when it hits the end of that timer, a big group of enemy ships will come in, basically forcing you to flee or eventually just get ground down and die. The regular influx of foes means that you have to keep a constant eye on the scanner, you have to be ready to react to any enemies that appear, but in between these waves you get a little bit of breathing room to do things like repair your ship, both inside and outside, and also being able to EVA out for any parts that may have been dropped from destroyed ships. A big part of the game then currently is gathering materials, things like nano-alloys, weapon upgrades, power cells, amongst other items. Nano-alloys is quite important, as it allows you to build new parts for your ship, like special equipment like shields or power generators, and also other weapons. They can also be used to create repair parts for the outer hull. Upgrades can be found later on, and you can even craft them as you level up to improve the weapons with things like increased damage, extended range, increased rate of fire, that sort of thing, more ammo friendly. Ships have a few empty slots in them that can be used for these additional items that can be crafted and then installed, but unfortunately your ship configuration between missions won't be kept. I believe the devs later on do plan to allow you to create your own custom setups for the different ships and launch with those, but as it is at the moment, you'll have to level up and you unlock new configurations for your ships, ranging from things like being able to do a CQB build that will have multiple rapid fire turrets, for instance, but they may lack some of the big guns, or ones that are focused mainly on sniping targets with beam lasers from range, that kind of thing. So one of the big balancing factors of Void Crew is energy management, and it actually prevents you from just switching on all of the equipment and weapons at the same time. Everything has a power limit, and your ship can only handle so much strain on it before that becomes unstable and your power core will shut down. Life support, weaponry, gravity scoops, shields, everything has a varying level of power requirement, so you have to keep an eye on what you're running and what items can be shut down between uses for other equipment, for instance. You can find things like power cells that you can plug in that will increase your power limit briefly when you need a boost, and there's even a craftable generator that has to be semi-regularly activated to give you a bump in your maximum power output, but you either need to find power cells or you have to craft the generator, which as I said, unless the configuration has one as standard, you'll have to gather the materials and craft it each mission to do that. However, I do like the balance though in the game's combat and the downtime activities. Gunning down waves of enemy fighters and calling out larger targets is fun. It doesn't overstay its welcome as you work together to get through tough encounters, and the bits in between with the light puzzling in some of the facilities and exploration for resources makes a nice diversion from this combat, which without the exploration and EVAing part and the in-between repairs, it would become pretty old pretty fast. Post-mission completion, you can also get things like loot boxes, which you don't have to pay to open. They just reward you with things like cosmetics, suit color patterns, visual customization parts, like the helmets can have little messages and emotes and stuff popping up on them, and your character makes you stand out a bit more. Any experience you gain can also be used to unlock skills, which can go in 4 different trees from different styles of play: gunnery, engineering, piloting, and EVA. But despite being able to put points into multiple different trees, you can only actually activate one tree at a time, so you can't make a kind of hybrid build, sadly. Leveling up will actually grant you access to the new ship configurations. You also get crafting recipes unlocked, and eventually you'll be able to go and take missions in some of the other zones. Currently there are 3 that obviously get more difficult as you go along. For early access then, a pretty solid gameplay loop, and if you want something for you and a bunch of friends to play semi-regularly, it's a pretty solid choice. Honestly, it's the little details that I enjoy with the title, like having to ensure that everyone is seated before a warp jump, since anyone still standing are instantly crushed against the bulkhead when you jump. The little repairs that you can make during combat, like patching electrical panels, fixing pipes, fixing the engine trim, reactivating systems that get knocked off, for instance, make it feel a little more tactile. I also like the little element with some of the weapons that require ammo, where you have to go over to the gun and like take the empty ammo box out, put a new one in, kind of thing, especially helpful for working with a gunner who might be fending off waves of enemies. But it also reminds you that you have to craft some of these items as you're playing. On the more technical side of things, so far the game has run really well for me. I haven't had any crashes or anything like that, no severe issues with lag or any input sort of issues, that kind of thing. It looks quite nice. It reminds me a lot of Warframe aesthetically, so whether you like that or not is might be kind of a determining factor. But though I say it reminds me of Warframe, I'm not saying it looks exactly the same, it just has that kind of aesthetic to it. The ship designs are pretty nice for both player and enemy vessels. They're very distinct and you can tell them apart very quickly. I hope though that they do add more ships later on for you to scamper around inside and repair. The sound design's quite good. Weapons are pretty punchy and powerful sounding. There's some good music in there, but I do hope they add a little bit more in the area of ambient sounds for things like when the engine's being pushed to its maximum and being able to hear that kind of hum throughout the ship. Maybe adding more elements as well, like alarms going off when the ship's taking more damage, and maybe making it a little bit more audibly distinct when you're being hit by different types of weapons, so you know what kind of enemy is currently attacking you, kind of thing. But yeah, outside of that, it's pretty good. Overall, I'd recommend Void Crew. Solid title so far. I look forward to seeing more of what is added as time goes on. And yeah, I'll wrap up this ramble here, I think. Thanks for watching, everyone. And if you want to see some gameplay with us just chatting over it and during a mission, let me know below in the comments. Until then, have a good week, everyone, and I'll see you in the next YI.